This is going to be a fascinating analysis. We're going to get into the heads of the globalists here to try to understand what they are thinking when they released this global pandemic and engineered this weapon against human beings, the Wuhan coronavirus, so-called COVID-19. Now, in the last week, I've become convinced that this release was deliberate. Originally, I thought it was an accident. That was the most likely explanation. There was a virology lab in Wuhan, and the Chinese were playing around with this biological weapon. They were engineering it, adding in what's called gain-of-function properties. We have a history of the accidental release of SARS viral strains from similar labs across China 4 times over the last, 15 years or so. So it seemed reasonable that this might have been an accident. But now I'm convinced that it was a deliberate release made to look like an accident. So let's start with some basics here. We know that, of course, there are many, we'll call them globalists. They're just, wealthy, elite people who run the world. They influence all the decision makers. Many of them are more powerful than governments. People like Bill Gates, who's a strong influencer. Some are billionaires and some are not. Some are just scientists, but they have a lot of influence. And what they are seeing is the total destruction of the biosphere, that Earth is being destroyed by humankind. Now, they're not wrong in that observation. They see, as probably you and I see, the total collapse of pollinators across the world. Did you realize there's a 70 or 80% collapse of insect biomass in Europe, according to studies? Did you know that if we lose the insects, everything else dies eventually? We lose the pollination, we lose the food supply, we lose human civilization. Did you know the oceans are dying? The globalists see that too. They see the mass plastics pollution, so-called microplastics in the oceans. They see the mass die-offs, the dead zones. Everywhere that a river from a human-populated continent empties into the ocean, there's a massive dead zone there. The agricultural chemicals, the runoff, the pollution, the heavy metals, the biohazards, all that. The globalists also see the loss of habitat. So much habitat has been destroyed, habitat that supports the biosphere, the ecosystem that sustains us all. And if you lose habitat, then the animals can't survive, and the insects can't survive, and the birds can't survive, and the pollinators can't survive, and everything collapses. So habitat destruction is very serious right now when you have the clear cutting of rainforests to grow genetically modified soybean products in Brazil, for example. But think about all the clear cutting in the state of Texas, where I live. You look around Texas and entire forests are missing because it's been bulldozed to make grazing ground for cattle, which seems insane. Why can't you leave some trees, Well, the answer is the more trees there are, the less grass grows, and so the cattle ranchers don't want any trees, even though the trees provide shade for the cows and help protect the moisture in the soil and so on. But a lot of places in Texas are just bulldozed down to the level of no more than 1 tree per acre. In fact, I've even heard that as a rule of thumb in Texas, that when you clear the land, leave 1 tree per acre. That's insane. There should be thousands of trees in that acre. But that's just one example. The collapse of the biosphere is here. Soil erosion is going to collapse the human food supply. The overuse of fossil water systems, such as the Ogallala water aquifer underneath Oklahoma and Kansas and parts of Texas and so on. It provides much of the water for the so-called breadbasket of the United States, the food production system. That water is going to be gone within, another generation. You've got the collapse of diversity of plants and the rise of monoculture, mechanized agriculture to grow GMO corn, for example, when those fields used to have 5,000 different species of plants and weeds and herbs and different soil microbes and strong diversity. And then you've got just piles and piles of trash everywhere. Human plastic trash and waste products everywhere. The point is that humans really are destroying this planet. Humans are causing a mass extinction event. Now, where I disagree with the globalists and the fake scientists is they claim that carbon dioxide is causing all this. They say it's global warming or climate change. They're just trying to use that because they can't explain all these other things, like the heavy metals contamination and the pesticides in the food supply, the soil erosion, the loss of fossil water, the collapse of pollinators, and so on. Those concepts are too complex for the general population to be able to process, so they just make up something new and they say, it's just carbon dioxide's bad. They know that's a lie, but they're using it to try to claim that humanity has to be seriously depopulated. And that's why you have all these left-wing people coming out and saying that the only answer is to drastically reduce human population, they say. Even